Guys, welcome to Piece of Code and welcome to this video. So what was I thinking before making this video? So basically I was doing a lot of videos on the solutions architect certification, so I thought I also received a lot of messages saying that I should do something on the professional certificate exam, the architect, AWS Solutions Architect professional certification. So I thought of making this video where I talk about this certification and what you can do to make your certification journey a little bit better, which can help you to crack this certification, and a lot of tips and tricks that we are going to discuss in this exam. Okay, so let's start with this video without wasting much time, and let's see. What is this exam about? Let's jump right to the question. I can talk about what is the duration of the exam, the number of questions in the exam, all that, right? We're going to talk about that in the end because that is all the required information you can find out in the internet, right? We're not going to waste our time on that. Let's jump what the exam expects from you, basically. So you are migrating, for example, this is just the way of asking the question. You're migrating a legacy 3-tier monolith with strict data residency, unpredictable traffic patterns, and a CEO that hates costs. What do you do? So in a nutshell, the questions revolve like this. You have to think like an architect, end to end. So in solutions architect, what happens is that there is a very small scenario that, for example, there is your users are everywhere over the world, and they are experiencing latency. What is the solution you would choose? And the best solution that comes to mind is CloudFront, right? If it's static data, so it's a direct solution that you get, right? But in this exam, you have to think end-to-end architectures because the questions will be scenario based, and it will involve you to think by combining a lot of services. We're going to discuss that in detail in a minute, but that's what the question, the exam expects from you. So let's talk about the cost of the exam. It's $300, and the time and the questions, number of questions is 75, and the time is 180 minutes or 3 hours. Okay, you think that 3 hours is too much? Please give the exam. You would think that it's not really enough. At least give a mock test, you have an idea. So let's have a comparison. Okay, it's not that you have to, if you have given the solutions architect exam, you have to completely start from the scratch. It's not that the case. You have to completely start from the scratch if you don't know anything about AWS. But if you have given the solutions architect exam, which is the SAP-C02 exam, you would have covered at least 50 to 60% of the syllabus that is needed. Not the syllabus, you would obviously complete the entire 100% of syllabus. What I mean is you are prepared 50 to 60% for the SAP-C02 exam, the professional certificate. That's what I mean. So see, there is no difference in the basic core services. See, in solutions architect, we have core VPCs, subnets, route tables, NAT gateways. The same thing you will have in in your professional architect exam as well. S3 will be there. It will not be renamed to some gigantic monster and something that will go over your head. It is not like that. The services will be the same. They are not going to invent new services for your professional certification exam, right? That doesn't make any sense. Load balancing, auto scaling basics, all of these things that you have learned in for the solutions architect will be the same. Identity and access management is same across any kind of a exam that you give for AWS. High availability and fault tolerance concept, all of these things will be the same. So don't worry, if you have studied for the solutions architect, you are at least a way or a notch higher than other participants because you have already given that certification, right? So this was the good news. What is the bad news? What is the difference? Where does this professional certificate exam is harder than, or complicated than the solutions architect exam? So basically complexity increases in this exam. So organizational complexity especially, right? So if you see the general questions, I have solved a lot of questions for the the solutions architect exam. Lot of the questions, 70% of the questions are single account based. 30%. Now they are increasing the number of questions for multi-account and all this organizational SCPs, all of these things. But 70% of the questions, I would say that it's single account, 1 or 2 or 3 services based questions, which is easier to pick the option, right? When you are presented with limited options, it is easier to pick. But when you are presented with a plethora of options, right, you can go with this way, you can go with S3, you can go with EMR, right? Whatever, there are multiple solutions you will find in this kind of exam, right? So that is where the complexity increases. Design for new solutions. Sometimes they will expect you to design the entire problem from scratch, right? They will give you all the services that you need. You have to pick the best set of services end to end for that particular question. We're going to see a couple of questions for you to get an idea, but that's what it is. Migration is a very important topic over here, guys. Migration, database migration, lift and shift, choosing between Snowball, DMS, data migration service, transfer acceleration, application migration service. All of these services is a little bit more used in this particular exam, because same thing is that they expect you more. They expect you to do the end-to-end solution where you migrate the old application to a new one and you work on that. So this is a very important thing, guys. Migration, you should focus more on migration as well. Cost control, anyways, we were doing questions on cost control as well as in the solutions architect exam, but here it is a bit more not complicated, in depth, I would say, because they would expect you to be a little bit more accurate about the costs. Okay, if it is a low cost solution, is it efficient? Is it highly available? All of these things you have to think about in this particular exam. Continuous improvement of existing solutions, monitoring, obviously, performance tuning, automation, refactoring. All of these topics were we talked about in solutions architect as well. But here it's a little bit in depth. So, but the main focus that I would say that you should consider is the complexity of organizational. Think about multi-account strategies. That is what you should focus more, because you have already read about all of these things, right? The cost control and monitoring and all that things. Migration is another very important topic that you should focus on. You should not leave this topic behind just by thinking that it's not related that much to AWS, but there are a lot of services which help you in this migration concepts, and they give you a lot of questions regarding that in the exam. So pattern of questions. Obviously, we're going to discuss a few questions, like 2-3 questions we're going to discuss. It doesn't matter if you know all the services, guys. It does not matter if you are not able to think like an architect, where you combine all of these services into a solution, a high level architecture, then you are not ready for the exam, right? So what are the things that you should consider before answering the question? First of all, the elimination technique, you can use it here also, but it becomes a little bit difficult here because you have to think a lot of things over here. So the elimination technique becomes a little bit difficult. That is my go-to concept for my solutions architect exam and other associate level exams, but any professional level exam, that concept is a little bit trickier to use. But if you are good in the architectures, then you can use that as well. So trade-offs. Are you going to save costs? I mean, you need the uptime, or you need both. You have to think like that. Integration, how the services are going to talk with each other. Are the services compatible with each other? All of these things you have to think, because in the option there will be a lot of services, and there will be 2-3 services which are compatible with another service. So you have to find out the best service which integrates with that other service. It is a little bit, I'm yapping a lot about all of these things, but this is what I wanted to convey, that you have to be better in figuring out the best architecture. Governance and security is a very important thing, guys, because if you are juggling between multiple AWS accounts, services, your keys, all these things. So, this governance, security, auditing, rules, right, SCPs, IAM becomes very, very important, because at the end of the day, whatever you do, it should be based on the principle of least privilege. You should not forget about that. You should not give away lot of privileges just to make sure your architecture works. Then we have about this performance tuning, right? Cost optimization, savings plan, reserved instances as S3 storage classes, compute optimizer. All of these things you have to talk about it, right? Automation, all of these things, very very important. Networking and connectivity, all of these things you have to think about, right? So keep that in mind, guys. So let's talk about a few sample questions. Let's jump right into the stuff and solve some previous questions, like 2 or 3 questions that will give you a little bit idea of what is happening over here. So let's go to my Microsoft OneNote. I have collected a few questions. I think 2 or 3 or 4 questions I have collected, and I want to just check this out. Okay, how do I do this? How do I make it full screen? Okay, this is fine. So it says that what says, you have recently joined a startup company building sensors to measure the street noise. Okay, I need this color actually. Okay, street noise. Actually, let me just okay, I need the I just want to drag this out a little bit so that it's visible to you guys. I'll just do this right now. I know I shouldn't do this in the video recording, but anyways, I need to make sure that the questions are very much visible to you guys. Okay, so we have you have recently joined a startup company building sensors to measure street noise and air quality in urban areas. The company has been running a pilot deployment of around 100 sensors for 3 months. Each sensor uploads 1 KB of sensors data every minute to a backend hosted on AWS. During the pilot, you measured a peak of 10 IOPS on the database, and you stored an average of 3 GB of sensor data per month in the database. The current deployment consists of load balanced auto scaled ingestion layer using EC2 instances and a PostgreSQL RDS database with 500 GB standard storage. The pilot is considered a success. Your CEO has managed to get the attention of some potential investors. The business plan requires a deployment of at least 100K sensors, which needs to be supported by the backend. You also need to store sensor data for at least 2 years to be able to compare year-over-year improvements. To secure funding, you have to make sure that the platform meets the requirements and leaves room for further scaling. See, this is what I am talking about. You need to make a setup over here. So what is the situation over here? You joined this startup, they are testing the smart sensors, to measure some stuff, right? What it is measuring? Something air quality it is measuring. Okay, air quality and noise. But now what they are expecting is the startups, they for the investment, you are planning for 100,000 sensors over here, right? And the data should be stored for at least 2 years to compare the trends. That's what end-to-end solution, that is what I'm talking about. You see, there is a whole lot of information that is giving to you guys. You see, the question also is very big, and normally you will see this kind of, it doesn't mean that you will not get easy questions. Obviously you will get baby questions and relaxing questions, but still this is the basic structure of the question that you would get. So you have to collect, same thing, what are the important points of the question. Every time I discuss the same thing you have to do here. What do we know from this question? Each sensor sends 1 KB of data per minute, right? What's the other thing? So if we calculate this, that is around 3 GB. That is around 3 GB of data per month for 100 sensors. right? Just having a little bit can be wrong, just a little bit approximation. So the big question over here is, so your backend is auto scaled, easy to layer, right? That is already auto scaled, and you have a RDS PostgreSQL 500 GB database, right? And one more important thing to notice is that your database peaked at 10 IOPS, during the pilot run, right? So the big question over here is that what setup will actually support this massive scale of this 100,000 this thing. So let's go through the option. Option number A says that add an SQS queue to the ingestion layer to buffer writes to the RDS instance. All right, so what does SQS do? SQS is great at decoupling components, and it acts as a buffer, so your ingestion layer doesn't put more pressure on the database all at once. But with 100k sensors, you are now ingesting around lot of GBs of data, maybe around 100 to 150 GBs of data per day, right? And that will be some terabytes of data per year. But you are still writing that data into a single RDS instance. Is that good? I don't think that is good. See, you are doing this, even if you buffer with your SQS, your RDS throughput will choke, because it will not be able to handle this much overload of data, right? That's what I mean. So in this case, I'm not going to go with option number A, because that doesn't make any sense. Even though you are cushioning the database with SQS, you are still, relying on a single RDS instance. That is not going to work. Option number B, saying that ingest the data into a DynamoDB table and move old data to a Redshift cluster. So what does this option is trying to tell me? So you are using DynamoDB for scalable high volume ingestion, data ingestion, right? And you are offloading the older data to Redshift for your analytics purpose. Now, keeping in mind, you will get confused that I was using an RDS, PostgreSQL SQL, database. Do I need to migrate to DynamoDB? That is a good question that you would ask yourself. But in this case, keep in mind that this is IoT data. IoT data is not relational data or structured data. Using PostgreSQL for IoT data is not feasible. DynamoDB, but in the case, is a NoSQL database. It's perfect for all this IoT style workloads. It can scale automatically. It can handle millions of writes per second, and it will give you the performance that you need, right? You can also set up the TTL, and you can auto expire them, whatever you want you can do. And you can use DynamoDB streams concept or Lambda to push the older records into Redshift. So this solution, in my opinion, is good, and it will help you in achieving that particular thing that you need. So let's consider this for now. Option number C says that replace the RDS instance with a 6-node Redshift cluster with 96 terabytes of storage. See, you are directly going with a very big shiny Redshift cluster. It's you would think that, okay, this is the way forward. I was using RDS instance, now I'm going to Redshift cluster. Redshift is not a transactional type database. This option is very easy to eliminate. Redshift is not going to work in this case because it's not a transactional type. This is for analytical queries. So Redshift is not going to work in this case. D says that keep the current architecture but upgrade RDS storage to 3 TB and 10K provisioned IOPS. Now you're throwing more money on your current not so good architecture. You will get more space, you will get more IOPS, but RDS doesn't scale at this level easily. Even with 10K provisioned IOPS, will eventually hit that saturation point, and the costs will be through the roof. You should not do this. When we have a very good approach where we are having an auto scalable, which can handle millions of writes per second, and it can easily cut down your costs, why would you go to this particular approach? So I'm gonna say that D is not gonna work in this case. Okay. Question number 2. Oh, I can see that it is telling me to choose 3 options in this case, but see, this is an example of a short question. I kept it here so that you will not get too much tensed, and you will get too much pressure on your heads that every question is a very big question. This is a small question, but it might make you think more. A company policies require encryption of sensitive data at rest. You are considering the possible options for protecting data while storing it at rest on an EBS data volume attached to an EC2 instance. Which of these options would allow you to encrypt your data at rest? It's not so bad. It's a very kind of a relaxing question. We can just yes, don't worry. You don't think that I have picked this out from the solutions architect, my set of questions. This is an PCA question only. But yeah, as I told you, some questions are easy. So we have to choose 3 options. So what we have to do, the question is asking you to pick 3 options that will allow encryption at rest. Okay. Rest. Not in transit, not in memory, not anywhere. Just in rest. So what are the options we have? A says that implement third-party volume encryption tools. Now, I mean, if I have to choose 3 out of this 5 options, I can consider A. Why? Because there are a lot of tools, and one of the best tools that is there is Cinematic, right? Lot of these tools are there that can encrypt data before it hits the disk. Encryption purpose, it gives you full control over your keys, whatever algorithms you are using, and more granular control, right? So basically you can use this third party volume encryption tools. B says that implement SSL TLS for all services running on the service. See, it's data in transit. That's why I told you that you have to find solutions for data at rest, not in transit. So not gonna go with B. Oh, this stuff is not working now. Okay, this is working now. C says that encrypt data inside your application before storing it on EBS. Very basically DIY solution, because it supports all that. EBS encryption you can do. It's easily supported, so it's all very easy stuff. So I'm not gonna go more further in that, because I have solved a lot of questions regarding this in my solutions architect series. So it's pretty simple. D says that encrypt data using native data encryption drivers at the file system level. I mean, this is a valid approach. Yes, you can, there is something known as Windows BitLocker or something like that, or Lux on Linux, right? This is one another native encryption you can use. So basically this sits above the block level, means that it encrypts files and folders and then passes the encrypted data down to EBS. So if someone gets access to your EBS snapshot, they will not be able to see the real data, they will see the scrambled data, right? So this will work. So D also is a good consideration. 2, nothing as EBS volumes are encrypted by default. No, this is not encrypted by default. You have to enable EBS encryption for encryption to work. So E is also not going to work. So we got our answers A, C and D. So see, in this question the elimination technique worked, right? So it's not that you are getting every time. Okay, so let's go to question number 3. It says that a customer is deploying an SSL enabled web application to AWS and would like to implement a separation of roles between the EC2 service administrators that are entitled to log into instances, as well as making API calls, and the security officers who will maintain and have exclusive access to application X509 certificate that contains the private key. What? Okay. See, they are not. I thought the question did not end. I also got a little bit confused, but it says that to AWS and would like to implement a separation of roles between EC2 service administrators that are entitled to log in to instances, as well as making API calls, and the security officers will be maintaining this certificate. Okay, so you have to maintain a separation of duties. There will be EC2 admins, right, and security officers, right? So EC2 admins can log in into the instances and they can do whatever they want, and security officers should be the only ones with the access to the SSL certificate and the private key. That's what it means. That's how we'll separate the things. So our goal is to do this separation of duties. Now let's go through the options. Option number A says that upload the certificate on an S3 bucket owned by security officers and accessible only by EC2 role of web servers. Now, if let's say this option you are going to consider, if EC2 admins can modify instance roles or metadata, they can give access, they can give themselves access to access the cert. So here the separation of role is not happening, right? And that's not what we want. So this option I'm not going to consider, right? See, because this is the broad role. You're telling that upload the certificate on S3 bucket owned by security officers and accessible only by EC2 role of the web servers. This is not going to work. EC2 admins can access the certificate in this particular case, right? B says that configure the web servers to retrieve the certificate upon boot from an cloud HSM it is managed by the security officers. Now cloud HSM is a very good thing over here. It's a very secure thing that you can do. It keeps your private keys inside a hardware module, and even AWS can't access them, right? Only the authorized users like your security officers will be able to access them, right? They will be the ones who will be managing the keys. So you can set up your application, whatever you have, to use the key but never see it. There is no role, EC2 role or something like that, which is associated over here. EC2 admins can't get access to that particular key. Only the authorized users will be able to access the key. So what does this do? This enforces this hardware level key protection, and it does what the question asks, basically separate the duties between the the EC2 admins and the security officers. So in my opinion, B is the correct option. C says that configure system permissions on the web servers to restrict access to the certificate only to the authority security officers. Now you can set file permissions, right? But EC2 admin, so here what it says is configure system permissions on the web servers. See, EC2 admins are anyways admins. EC2 admins, if they have sudo access or root access, they can override those restrictions easily. System permissions, that's what we are talking about, and you are doing it directly on the web servers. So this is not going to work because they are EC2 admins. They can override those permissions. So this is not a strong control where the admins have an elevated form of access. So you have to prevent them also, right? So C is also not going to work. Configure IAM policies authorizing access to the certificate store only to the security officers and terminate SSL on ELB. Now, this is a decent option, right? So you are offloading SSL to the ELB, Elastic Load Balancer, and storing the certificate in, certificate manager, ACM or IAM cert store, right? EC2 instances, are plain HTTP and they never see the private key. Only the security officers can manage the certificate via the IAM permissions. EC2 admins don't have that, so this is a very clean and scalable approach, but we have two options in our hand. This is where the options go crazy. You have to think a lot before actually giving the option. I am also thinking out of B and D, because D is also a very strong contender now. What should be the option? So B says that hardcore security, we are going to use cloud HSM. You will have your hardware backed thing. It is a little bit more complex, maybe a little bit more expensive, but it has all the compliance requirements. It is doing the separation of duty very well, and that's a very good option. So B says that. D is a little bit more simpler side, right? You are telling AWS ACM to manage everything, and you are using IAM permissions in a AWS native way. So what do I think is the final option? I would suggest that I will go now with option number D. I'm gonna just take back this option number B, just because the fact that you have to spend more over here and so much security, right, you are giving just for the separation of the duties, which is fine. If there is a very hardcore compliance requirement which was asked in the question, saying that the certificate should be in a separate hardware module, or it cannot be in the cloud environment, or there is some some security restrictions and compliance requirements, I could have gone with B. But here D is the native way of doing, and always I think that AWS expects that you use their native services over some other service. In my opinion, D is the correct option, but if you have your own opinions, I would suggest you can put it in the comments. See, that's why you have to think so much, right? Question number 4. It says that a web company is looking for to implement an intrusion detection and prevention system into the deployed VPC. The platform should have the ability to scale to thousands of instances running inside of the VPC. How should they architect the solution to achieve these goals? So what are the things that we need to do over here is, first of all, intrusion detection. So detect threats, something like that. We have also prevent them, and we have to keep in mind that the platform should have the ability to scale to scalability, basically it should have. So what we have to do the particular solution. So end-to-end solution we have to find out here also. Okay, let's see. Option number A says that configure an instance with mirror monitoring software and elastic network interface ENI set to promiscuous mode packet sniffing to see traffic across the VPC. So sniffing the packets, it's a very old way of doing, I would say. Packet sniffer softwares were used like very, in our, I am also not that old, I am telling olden days. When I was in college, I used to do all that stuff. Anyways, see, sniffing all the packets approach. The problem over here is that this doesn't work in AWS, because when we have ENIs, right, elastic network interfaces, they are isolated per instance, right? So even if you go full, packet sniffing mode and set it to promiscuous, that it is telling you, right, ENI, and set it to promiscuous mode, right, it won't see the traffic from other instances in the VPC. That's how VPC is, works over here. It's super isolated and it is secure, so you cannot sniff the packets over here. That is not possible, right? Just the fact that AWS VPCs don't allow this promiscuous sniffing like we have in a traditional local networks, or you can do this sniffing, packet sniffer. I forgot what was this good software that is a very good packet sniffer, some shark or something, I forgot. Yeah, so A is not going to work. B says that create a second VPC and route all traffic from the primary application VPC through the second VPC where the scalable virtualized IDS IPS platform resides. Now it's a kind of a good idea, you would think, but trying to isolate the IDS IPS in a separate VPC and forcing what to a second VPC, and you route all the traffic. That's what it means, right? But here's the thing, routing traffic between VPCs doesn't magically give you the ability to inspect all the flows, right? You can introduce some kind of complex routing, single points of failure, whatever, but even if you overcomplicate things between your VPCs, it is not going to work because it doesn't capture all the traffic, I mean internal VPC traffic and whatnot, and this is not going to work. So I'm not going to go with B as well. C says that configure servers running in the VPC using the host based route commands to send all traffic through the platform to scalable virtualized IDS IPS. So what are we doing here is using host based route commands to send all traffic through the platform to scalable virtualized IDS IPS. So here we are going to rely on manual host based routing across thousands of instances, right? That's what the option means. You're configuring servers running in the VPC using host based route commands, right? Now this is a complete nightmare because if something is misconfigured or something is some operational default, some defect occurs, then it's gone. It's very error prone. So not gonna go with C, and we are left with only one option, which is D, but let's also discuss this option. D says that configure each host with an agent that collects all network traffic and sends that traffic to IDS IPS platform for inspection. This is very much a correct option, and this is very easy to configure because you can install a lightweight agent like CrowdStrike or Trend Micro. Trend Micro, all of these things, this like agents. It will capture the local traffic and forward it to a centralized IDS IPS engine. It scales on the fact that each instance captures only its own traffic, right, which is all it can see anyway in AWS. As I told you before, that is packet sniffing all of this across your VPCs and internal VPCs. It's not possible, right? So basically whatever is coming to your your instance, it will be their own traffic. The data gets pushed to scalable platform, could be a managed service or something like that, and there is no routing or over complication of things. Routing is a different concept case. This is how you route the traffic between your instances or your VPCs. Here it's not that the problem is how can you work on the network traffic that you receive in your instances. So I think in that opinion, D is the correct option. So just for this 4 questions, guys, you can see that how much thinking and how much time it needs to answer these questions. So that is the difference between the solutions architect and this kind of questions, where you have to think a lot on what solution will be better. I don't want to scare off you guys, just to make you guys understand how the question actually comes in the exam. If you want me to solve more questions, guys, you can just put in the chats. Whenever I get time, I can make a new series on professional architect as well. Okay. All right, so this was about the questions. Let's move on. I think we took a lot of time in the question solving section. I'm gonna just go through the other stuff in my my presentation. So very common topics we already discussed about IAM, access control, storage, network and connectivity like VPC peering, transit gateway, security groups, NSCLs. As you just saw, right, in my sample questions, we solved like 2 questions out of the 4 were based on networking. So your networking should be very much on the throttle or something like that. High availability and resilience, that is okay, you would already know that when you solve for solutions architect. So this is a little bit easier, I would say. Here migration, again I am telling you, migration and modernization is very, very important. Monitoring and automation, all of this stuff you have to have a very good hand on. So some common architectures, if you want me to make more videos on AWS architectures, guys, please comment down. I can make some more architectures and we can talk about that, which is important for the solutions architect as well as the professional certificate exam. Okay, so and this is an example of a common architecture that you would see in the question or in the exam, where what is happening is that you have your on-premises data center, you have your AWS cloud, and there is a connection between them. So basically, if I have to make up a story, your customer has workloads on its on-premises data center but wants to leverage your AWS cloud for scalability or some hybrid model, and they need a secure, reliable and low latency connection between their on-prem network and AWS. So if you visualize it, it will look something like this. So you would obviously have your AWS, okay, I can't write here, so I'll just explain it. You'll have your AWS VPC, right, and you would have AWS Direct Connect if it is needed, because in some questions you would need that low latency, high bandwidth, dedicated connection between your your AWS cloud and your on-premises data center. In that case, you would need a direct connect. Site-to-site VPN is obviously preferred as a backup to your direct connect. If it fails or something happens, obviously you have your site-to-site VPN. Transit gateway is like your traffic system. Basically, it will route between multiple VPCs and your on-premises system. It's like a point hub connecting all of your networks with your on-premises data center. And then we have a direct connect gateway. Basically it will connect your direct connect to multiple VPCs or to your transit gateway, right? So here you have your direct connect gateway. So virtual private gateway, okay, I forgot about virtual private gateway. Obviously you would have, this is the AWS side of the VPN connection. Okay, so you have a site-to-site VPN. On the AWS side, you would have your virtual private gateway. So what is the important point of this architecture is that you have a primary path, which is your direct connect. That's a dedicated fiber line between your on-prem and AWS. It's very fast and reliable. It will not touch the public internet. It's good for massive data transfers. If there is a migration in progress, periodically you are sending data and all that stuff, it will work like a charm. Backup, if the direct connect doesn't work, you still have the site-to-site VPN for you to work. That's your hybrid cloud gateway, you can say, right? It will go over the public internet, but that is the backup. Obviously you can create a tunnel. It gives you a tunnel, and that traffic will flow in that tunnel only, so it will be that much unsecure. It will be secure. You will be doing the routing via BGP. BGP is Border Gateway Protocol, classic one-on-one networking stuff. BGP helps in a lot of stuffs like detecting failures, rerouting traffic. That's what it means, right? For routing you can use BGP. Transit gateway, as I already told you, that it's like a hub, connecting all of your VPCs with your on-premises data center and all of these things. So that's how, this is just a basic example of your on-prem connectivity with the AWS cloud, like a hybrid connection you are having over here. So this kind of questions will involve this kind of architecture. Let's move on to a very simpler architecture now, where all of these services come into the picture. Obviously this seems to be very easy, but they will twist and turn the words in the question so that you will be facing a little bit issues. So very basic analytics stack, where you have an ingestion layer, right? Put it into S3, then you have AWS Glue, right? What does this particular AWS Glue does? Basically it is a ETL tool, right? Extract, transform and load tool. Then you have Athena over here, and then you visualize the data using QuickSight. Basic architecture, there are a lot of hundreds of architecture just based on these services, but at the end of the day, this is the best set of services for this kind of architecture. So whenever you see this kind of a question, it might revolve around these many services, just an example architecture. Obviously if you want me to solve more architectural problems and explain you more architectures, you can comment down in the chat and I'll be seeing that, and if I get time I'll obviously put that video out. Learning sources, let's come to the learning sources. I would suggest that AWS documentation is the best source of learning for your PCA preparation. Why? Because see, obviously you should have a course which you can follow for the topics. So for every topic that you study in the course, you can go to the AWS documentation and study in depth about that. All of these external services like using an agent, right, or cloud HSM, all of these ideas will come to your mind if you explore outside of your comfort zone, right, outside of the course that you are doing. So AWS documentation will help you that, and there are a lot of free topics in AWS Skill Builder as well. You can go and have a look at that. If you want to go for a course, obviously you should have a course to guide you. You can check out on Udemy, is the very cost effective, right? There is also Adrian Cantrell's course. Adrian Cantrell, yeah, I think I got the name right, but it is very costly, at least for people in India. So I would suggest you can go to Udemy. You can check out at least Stephen Marek's course or Neil Davis' course. I found these two courses to be very good on the professional architect side. AWS white papers, guys, very important for the professional exam. I list down the the important white papers that you need for the exam, and reference architectures, right? Very important. That is also free. I think you can go and check it out on the AWS. So these are all the important white papers that you can check out. Well architected framework, it's very important for the solutions architect as well. Reliability pillar, cloud adoption framework, security best practices, global infrastructure and storage services FAQs. Please check out this white papers, guys, if you are preparing for the exam, and you will rock your exam if you are good in the white papers as well. A lot of questions come from the white papers. Today you would have 180 minutes to solve 75 questions. You would have long scenarios, obviously, as we saw in the questions, sample question, that you have to think a lot, but don't start to panic. It will get easier as you solve more and more mock questions. use the flag plus review option, guys. It's very, very important that whenever you have a doubt on a question, you always flag it, and so that you can come back and have a better view when you are, you know, almost at the end of the exam. Sometimes people get that confidence that okay, whatever I had left, I can go and solve the question. So just don't blindly mark the questions as correct. Flag them. If you have a doubt, come back to them when you are having the time. Trust your preparation. At the end of the day, that is what I want to say. There is no hack to crack this exam like that. It's a difficult exam, but it's fine. So I think that's all about what I wanted to discuss about this particular professional architect exam. And as I told you, if you need more videos based on the professional architect exam, you can just comment down in the chat and I will try to come up with some more videos. Okay, so that's all for today, guys. Till the next video, have a nice day. Take care. Bye bye.